In this last section, we're going to be talking about developing friendship skills. And as I said in the last part, we hope that developing those interactions between children will lead to friendships. So we do need to be using all of the strategies that we talk through in part 3 to support your child to first play alongside other children and then start those early interactions through their play. And hopefully, as I say, this will lead to friendships between you and their peers. I'm going to talk through the development of friendship skills, particularly at that first level, at that first stage. And this is taken from a psychologist called Tony Attwood, who specialises in friendship skills and social communication needs. So he says that at level 1, which is for children approximately 3 to 6 years old, children will understand the basic needs to take turns and to share. At that particular point in time, a friend in that moment, so it's momentary, is the person who gives you things, or someone that you play with, perhaps because they're around or they're sharing your things. And you might hear a child saying that they're your friend, they're his friend because he helps me. So rather than that friendship being two-way at this point, where they might say, we help each other, at this point, it will be that he helps me. At this point in friendship development, friendship is based on proximity. So those people that are near them, or maybe physical attributes. So it might, when you ask a child, why is he your friend? The typical response might be, he lives next door, or he sits next to me, or he's in my class. So thinking about just this first level of friendship, we're going to be talking through how we can support your child to be able to take turns and share, and to increase their awareness of what friendships are at this stage. Understanding basic needs to take turns. So if your child is now happily playing alongside others during their play, but they're not yet interacting much or talking much, you can try to build turn-taking games into their play. Turn-taking games help children to learn rules for taking turns. And if you think about a conversation, that is also a turn-taking game, isn't it? Because one person will say something and then somebody will say something back. So it's giving them those early skills of conversations, even through these turn-taking games. And turn-takings will also allow children to interact with other people and work together. But often they don't actually have to share the actual toy that they're holding, but just do an activity together. So early turn-taking games might be just pushing around cars or trains, or taking it in turns to drive around the track, where they can still hold their own car. They're not having to give their car away to somebody else. They just have to wait their turn to do it. Or that they are building towers together and they're taking a turn to add their own block onto the tower. But again, they're not having to give their item to another person, which is what some children can find difficult at these early stages. You can post shapes or pictures into a box and take turns to do so, using instruments to take turns, or even using finger puppets, so taking turns to make them say hello or goodbye as they go into and out of different places. As children get more advanced at their turn taking, they might be able to start actually giving their item, their resource, to the other person because they feel more confident in doing that. Or you can try games that involve communicating with one another. So things like Simon Says or What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, or I Spy are all turn-taking games which involve verbal language as well as the play. You've obviously got lots of turn-taking games like Pop-Up Pirates, Snakes and Ladders, where they have to wait their turn to play. You could also set up joint tasks together, such as making a specific model or completing a puzzle together, or doing a whole cooking task where you have to take turns for a particular goal to achieve together. barrier games can be really useful for taking turns and this is the idea where you are taking turns to give instructions to each other. So what a barrier game is that you've got two people either side of a barrier. So a barrier could be just a cardboard box in the middle, or something that you can't see through between you or one child and the other child. And you can either have it where you've got the same set of equipment on both sides, and one child gives an instruction to the other child, and then you lift up the barrier and then see whether you've got the same thing. So for example, you've perhaps got some different color bricks on both sides of the barrier, and one child would say, put the red brick on the top, then put the yellow brick on the top, put the green brick on top, and then you would take the barrier away and see whether you've both got the same thing. So it's a great communication game for listening to instructions, but also verbally practicing giving instructions to see if you can express yourself accurately to the other person. Or it might be that you've got different equipment on the side of the barrier, but you're just giving instructions about what you need to do. So it might be that one child has got a picture that's already been coloured in, and on the other side the child has got a picture that hasn't been coloured in, and they have to give instructions about how to colour it. So it might be colour the hat brown or colour the shoes black, for example. Or it might be that there's an idea of Lego therapy, and it might be that you've got a small Lego model, a really simple Lego model with 2 or 3 different pieces. Start it off really simply, and you've got the Lego model made on one side, and then you've got the pieces on the other, and the child has to give the instructions as to how to build the Lego model on the other side. So they're all great games in terms of taking turns, working with another child, and increasingly using more language to interact and play with the other child. Don't forget that throughout all of these turn-taking games, you can continue to be using the strategies that we talked about in the last section, which is about making comments about what each other are doing within the play, or giving them suggestions as to what they could do whilst they're playing together, whilst they're building their towers or pushing their cars around. Or even actually while they're doing their cooking tasks, they could be giving compliments and using verbal language to interact with each other. At first, when you're introducing turn taking, you might want to use some visual support to help your child to take turns. It might be that you can simply do this by using a gesture, so saying stop or wait, or showing somebody whose turn it is by pointing to them or showing them to the other person. Or it might be that you use visuals like these to show them pictures. So you've got a title picture to say that you are taking turns or playing a turn-taking game. You might show them the name of the game, so we're playing Snap. And then you will show them a simple wait or go card, which you can use to show them when it's their turn or whether it's somebody else's turn. These are just some different pictures that you could use. Or you might want to go back to your traffic light cards and use the stop go cards to support them to know when it's their turn and when they should be waiting. The other part of level 1 stated that a friend is someone you play with because they are around or sharing your materials. So basically, we need to think about having somewhere where they can be together and play. So this does go over what we talked about in the last session as well, which thinks about the resources that we have and the positioning of your child in relation to their peers around them. So what we can do is think about setting up semi-structured activities and having them available to give them options based on their interests. So you can have games, so say if they like pushing things around or moving things from one place to another, you can set up a game where the rules are that they have to each take a cup of water from one bucket to another bucket and pour it in, and they have to work as a team to get it finished as quickly as possible. But it's setting up something that an adult has sorted out, so they're not having to use their imagination to come up with their own play ideas, but they're doing a joint task which they can do with somebody else. And like it says, this has to be based on their interests. So it's thinking about what they like to do and really thinking about what they might do with the toys. And because at the end of the day, a friend is going to be someone that has similar interests in them. So the person that comes and plays with them is going to be also a person that likes that. And therefore, they've got that in common with each other. So whilst planning this, we also need to think about how long we want the interaction to last, and where will the activities be. We need to use the resources to create those opportunities for the play activities. So as I've said, consider the child's interests, having materials that they may be likely to share with each other. As we talked about in the last section, considering well-defined spaces and groupings where they can play together with just a small number of people, having duplicates to provide copying opportunities, and actually to place sociable children with them. Because if a child is sociable, they're going to initiate that interaction with the other person, particularly if they're doing a joint task or something that they're enjoying doing. And that's going to make it easier for your child to keep that interaction going. I'd advise, first of all, to keep the time short whilst interacting within this particular game, so that there's not the opportunity for things to start going wrong, or for the interaction to start getting difficult between the children. And throughout this, we're going to be using our social coaching skills, which is to mediate the play, by joining in and stepping back out if you need to, making those play suggestions, giving the child a role to play within the play, and you're going to be modelling that sharing and turn taking throughout. We're thinking now about the social curriculum. So what I mean by this is teaching children about what a friend is. Children with social communication needs are likely to find friendships difficult because the skills that they need haven't come naturally to them like it might do with other children. And it might be that they are watching what other people are doing and they're having a go. So there's that trial and error element, like there is with all children. But with social communication needs or friendship skills, often as adults, we are not specifically teaching our children how to get better at them. So, for example, if a child had difficulty with reading, or maybe with learning how to use a skipping rope, a parent will naturally support a child to get better at those things and break down those skills and really help them to build those skills for their child. But in terms of teaching the concepts of what a friend is, it's something that we don't do quite as naturally. So therefore, we need to help our child to learn about what a friend is and about the concepts of what a good friend is, or what is friendly, what is being friendly or not being friendly is. And so we can, again, do this within everyday situations that we have with our child. We can point out these skills when watching people in the park or when they're in nursery. We can watch videos and we can pause them when we see good examples of someone being friendly. We can talk about the facial expressions we see and the gestures that people use to help somebody to be friendly or not being friendly. And we can observe what other children are doing to interact. So as parents, we can watch to see what other people their age are doing, to see, well, how is that child joining in? So at the park, what is that child doing to help them to join in into those interactions and into those shared games? What phrases do they use when they come and play? It's unlikely that they'll come up and say, can I play with you? But what is it that they're doing? Is it something that they're doing with their non-verbal communication, in terms of showing somebody that they want to join in with them, which is then what you can teach your child to do as well. And once you've seen how other children are doing it, what phrases that other people are using, you can then practice those skills together. So using role play at home or using toys. So you might have two toys that your child's really interested in, and you might want one toy to play with the other toy, and you can model how that toy needs to interact in order to start those interactions going. And you can obviously talk about it with your child as well. What can be really useful in role play is also doing the wrong thing or being rude, and asking them what they should have done. So it's getting the child to identify problems early on and getting them to try and problem solve, to say, no, that's not how you do it. That's not what you should do. So that they're starting to recognize those good friendship skills versus not being friendly or perhaps not doing the right thing. Throughout this, we obviously want to be providing encouragement and positive feedback, and tell them when they got it right using description of what went well. And that's what's really important, of giving that really specific feedback to say, I saw you smiling at that other child, and that was a really friendly thing to do. Or I saw you standing and looking at that other child playing with the bricks, which showed him that you were interested in what he was doing. So you're being very specific about what you're saying to your child to help them to learn about what a good friend is, and what they can do in their play situations. Tony Attwood talks about the Indices of friendship scale, which is a list of what he says are friendship requirements, which are all skills that together with your child you can role play and practice together, and point them out when you see other people doing them, as we just talked about, to improve your child's skills in each of these areas. Obviously, within each of these areas, there will be a different level of ability based on how old your child is, but these are going to be skills that will continue to develop as they get older. You can go on the website to look at further information about this, but it's lots of things like entry skills, so recognizing when somebody wants you to interact with them versus not interacting. And from a very young age, you can be modeling this with your role play toys of one toy facing the wrong other way, and turning their back to the other character, and then simply saying, does this child want to play with you, or does this character want to play with you? And your child will learn to say, well, no, because they're not looking at me, they're not facing me, so I know they don't want to play with me, or they've turned away because they don't want to play with me. So at a very simple level, we can be introducing these concepts to support the development of each of these areas. So in looking closer at these, there's things like those conversation skills, which we've also talked about a lot, sharing skills, turn taking, showing an interest in what other people are doing, which again, we've talked about in terms of making comments about what other people are doing, giving compliments to the other person, but also listening and looking when some people are talking to us or interacting with us. And I think a good one to have at the end there is about ending an interaction or a conversation, and doing that in an appropriate way rather than just walking off or wandering away, so that the child knows that they can do that in a way that the other children will be happy with. A lot of parents talk to us about their children having difficulties with their emotions, that perhaps they can get upset easily, or find it hard to calm down, or perhaps that they don't respond appropriately to how other people are feeling. How your child is feeling is going to be having a big impact on how they interact with other people. And it's going to be having an impact on their ability to make friends with other people. So when planning activities for interactions and friendships, you might want to consider how tired your child is feeling, or how long they've already been doing an activity for. So you might want to really think about keeping activities short so that they're not starting to get frustrated with things. Do they need a physical break away from an activity and away from another child to just have some time by themselves? How much are they concentrating on an activity that you've set up? Because again, that's a huge amount of concentration is going to be making them feel tired and might make them feel less able to interact with the other people. Are there any other distractions within the environment that you've set up, which means that they might actually move away from the interactions because it's too noisy, or there's too many people there, or perhaps that there's lots of other toys that are more exciting than the ones that you've got out. And so then thinking, well, how is the child feeling right now? And if they're upset, then your attempts to get them to interact with other people aren't going to be as successful. I'd say in terms of supporting emotional regulation or how a child is feeling is outside the realms of speech and language therapy advice. However, it is something for you to consider. But what we can teach as speech and language therapists is about supporting your child to understand different emotions and the vocabulary of emotions, and how they can recognize the emotions of other people. And the way we can do this is really thinking about how to model how we are feeling and how other people are feeling in situations that happen within your child's life experiences. So we can discuss how different facial expressions can indicate different emotions. We can show them pictures to demonstrate this. So we can show them a picture of a happy person or a sad person or an angry person. And we can talk about different situations that would make us happy or sad or angry. And I would say it would be really useful to keep those pictures of those emotions very visible for the child. So you can have them up on the wall in nursery, and you can have them on your fridge at home, so that you can continually refer to how you're feeling throughout the day as things happen. Another thing you can do is take it in turns to make different facial expressions in front of a mirror. So making a sad face or a happy face, and talking about the different things that happen to your face when you're sad, when you're angry. So for example, when you're angry, you might get lines in your forehead, your eyebrows go down, your eyes go smaller. So you're really pointing out those particular facial expressions which can reflect how somebody is feeling. You can encourage your child to verbalize their emotions. And again, you can do this by talking about your own emotions of how you feel about things, and always link this to what has happened around you. So for example, I'm feeling really happy today because I got a new t-shirt, a new tablet for my birthday. So you're always explaining why you've got those different emotions, rather than just saying, I am happy today. But you can also link that again to the facial expression. Look, I'm feeling happy, I'm smiling. Or look at that person over there, I can see they're happy because they are smiling. We can also label how people are thinking or what they are feeling in real life situations, or on TV or in books that we see. So I know they feel happy because they're smiling, or I think they will feel excited about going to the party. So we're using these words like knowing and thinking based on what we can see, what the evidence is that we can see about how other people feel. We've now come to the end of the training, and I want to just make sure that you have an action plan in place to support your child. So I want you to look back at the action plan that you started to complete earlier, where I asked you to consider your child's social interaction, communication, and their play. And I want you to use the care plan to think about how you might try to manage the development of these areas for your child. So in your pack, you can go through each of these areas in terms of thinking about whether there are any visual strategies that you'd like to put in place to support your child. Look at what stage of play your child is up to and whether there are any strategies that you'd like to put in place to develop this further. We talked about providing strategies for improving your child's use of language with other children, which might be something that you want to consider. And then we looked at strategies to develop friendships. And again, this is something that you might want to think about. So you can go through that list and see which ones are relevant for supporting your child. After that, please can I ask that you then complete the evaluation form again, which is the orange section, in terms of how you now feel in terms of understanding social communication needs and how you may be able to manage those to support your child further. After that, please can I ask that you email our department, and the email address is on your pack, to let them know that you have completed the training, and also if you could include your action plan and evaluation forms as well, we can then keep that in your child's record to then support you to evaluate how successful that's been when we review your child. So what happens next? What we'd like is for you, so that's the parents and your child's nursery or school, to start to use the strategies that we've discussed today to help support your child at home and within their nursery or school. We want you to see what works best for you and your child, because obviously every child is different, and what works for one child might not work for another child. So please keep in mind that we don't expect that every strategy we talk about will be really successful, and some will work better than others. We're also aware that your child's needs may change over time. So something that's working now might not work later, and something that you think your child doesn't need now might be more useful at a later time. So this training program will be available still online, so you can have a look at this again in future. And it can also be available for other staff working with your child in school or nursery. Perhaps during a transition, you can ask the next key worker or staff member to watch the videos to support your child next year. In terms of following up for a review with speech and language therapy, we will contact you in about 3 months' time, but we'll only do this if we know that you've completed the training. So that's why we really need you to email us to let you know that you've completed this. We will do a phone review, and we will then identify what next steps of intervention or support your child might need. It might be that your child is discharged at this time because it's felt that your child will continue to need ongoing support for their social communication over time, because we don't expect for all of these areas to be fully developed within 3 months. But the strategies that have been put in place will need to be ongoing over time. It might be that they need an additional care plan, perhaps to support their language needs, in which case we may come out to see your child again in nursery or school, or we may invite you to clinic to do a review of how things are going. But this will be discussed with you at that phone review with you. If your child's being discharged, you can re-refer to our service in the future. Don't feel that that's the end and you won't ever see us again if you feel that your child's needs do change, or whether it's some new concerns arise. But we do ask for you to wait about 6 months to give you that opportunity to implement the strategies that we've talked through today. Also, just to bring to your attention that we have another social communication support program, which is called Working Together to Develop Social Communication. And this is for primary age children who are a little bit older than the children that this program has been for, and it talks a lot more about more verbal strategies that might be helpful to support slightly older children. So as an overview, we've talked a lot about social communication needs for children in the early years. And we've talked about a lot of strategies to support children's social communication skills and play. This is involving watch, wait and imitate during play, developing the use of language with peers, developing friendship skills, providing visual strategy ideas, and hopefully you've come up with an action plan which you feel will be helpful to use with your child. So just to finish off, again, just to summarise, that children can experience different types of social communication difficulties. Again, we don't expect for your child to have difficulties in all these areas, or there might be just one area that your child would benefit from the most at this time. Please continue to use the strategies we've discussed to help your child to support that development of play and interaction. See what works best, and please be aware that your child's needs may change over time. In your pack here, you can see that I've included some signposting, so there are some other organisations that may be able to help you and your child. And I've also attached some resources here which you may find useful to look at in more detail. And this includes some further resources for developing friendship skills, which is on the Tony Atwood and Carol Gray website, withyoueverystepoftheway.com. And it talks about some books and some resources that you can use for preschool age children and resources for school age children as well. Thank you for listening, and please contact us if you've got any questions or concerns. Thank you.